Welcome to the SID Washington Career. We're so excited to have you here today. I am Julie Montgomery. I am the Vice President of SID Washington, and you are at the career panel, the first career panel. There's another one happening, so you are at the many paths of international development, which is right for you. We're so excited today. And we have a big day ahead of us. We hope that you can join us all day. We start the career fair this morning with the panels, and then we move into the exhibit hall. And then this afternoon from 4 to 5, we have our networking happy hour with our SID staff, board members, and co-chairs. So we hope that you can attend all the event today. So before we get started, I really wanted to welcome everyone. I encourage you to introduce yourself in the chat. You will learn a little bit more all about the speakers in a moment and the moderator, but in the meantime, please put your name, organization, and where you're joining us from today. So while you do that, I thought I would talk a little bit about SID Washington. For those that are unfamiliar with SID Washington, we are the largest chapter, most active chapter of the Society for International Development, which is a global network, which basically brings together international development professionals and organizations to come together to meet, learn, and share information. We kind of see ourselves as the global town square. What I've loved, I've worked in the association world and international development for my entire career. And what's really unique about SID Washington is that we are a very diverse community. We represent all kinds of different organizations, small to large, NGOs, the private sector, nonprofits, universities, embassies, think tanks, all the entire spectrum. And as a result, I get to meet so many different people with very unique career paths. And so I'm so excited that we are able to bring some of those people today to share their experience. But before we go, I hope you put some, introduce yourself in the chat, but we have a short poll, two questions. First, I'm curious, are you a SID Washington member? Let's see. I'll do the poll. Okay, there. So are you a SID member? We'd love to hear see who's a member here. And then where are you joining us from today? We're based in Washington, D.C., but we're really, being here virtually has been amazing, and doing stuff virtually because we can bring in people from all around the world. And, that is was a long-term goal of SID Washington. But now, I guess that's somewhat the silver lining of the pandemic, is that we can bring in, really be a global community. So it looks like the majority of people are not SID members. So if you're not a member and you're interested, please reach out to me because I'm in charge of membership. So I would love to talk to you more about membership. And then where are you joining from? So outside of DC, this is great. It's great. As I said, previously when we had in person, most of our meetings were in person. So it was all like DC people, except our kind of big events, like our conference and career fair. All right. Okay, so I'll end the poll. Okay. I realize that you probably didn't see the results, but now I hope you all can see the results. Okay. All right. Okay. So let me go back to the next thing. So you saw that we were recording just a few top kind of logistic things. We were recording this session. We're going to be sharing this publicly because we really want to share this with the community overall. There is live transcription, closed captioning. If you'd like, you can set that up in your settings. And then if you have a question, please post it in the chat box. We will try to answer as many as we can during the Q&A. So yes, please do that. And finally, I just want to say it now, there will be a reminder at the end of the session, but please fill out our post-event survey. This really will help us with future events. And here's a few things that we think you might be interested in getting involved in. We have a Afghanistan affinity group coming up, a work group event, sign up for our newsletter, and then follow us up on social media. So now I will turn it over to the speakers. But before we get started, I really just wanted to say a few things about Jane. You have her bio. We have links in the chat to her bio, but she is currently the managing director of Swanee Hunt Alternatives. And she has really an impressive background and a very diverse background, like all of our panelists today. Prior to her current position, she was a professor and international studies at the International Studies program at Davidson College. She also has worked as an executive for several nonprofits, including the Red Cross and the American Research Center in Egypt. And then she was a senior service officer. So she was all around the world, working all around the world. She worked in Cyprus, Spain, Israel, Washington, D.C., and I'm sure there are many, many more places. So as you can see, you know, she worked in so many different organizations. Her path is unique, like so many people that I've met in this sector. But she is, you know, she really has helped the sector, has made an impact in international development, diplomacy, humanitarian action, and philanthropy. So welcome, Jane, welcome CD, Dueaa, and Gabe. I will turn it over to Jane.
Thank you so much, Julie, and welcome everyone. I've had a great time looking at the chat as you've been introducing yourselves and seeing a lot of people in global public health. Good for you, particularly during this day and age of a pandemic. And also refugees and migration, global development, graduate study, undergrads, interns. What I'm really excited to tell you is that, well, first of all, I wish I had had the benefit of SID-W and this session when I began my career in development, diplomacy, and humanitarian affairs 35 years ago. SID-W is a great organization. In fact, when I was at Davidson College, which is a small liberal arts college just outside Charlotte, North Carolina, I was able to get us an institutional membership thanks to Julie. And I know that my students, as well as my colleagues, faculty and staff, benefited a lot from it. And I continue to really value my membership in SID-W. So my thanks to the terrific team who brought us all together today and this incredible panel of development professionals. Each of them has such a wide range of experience and expertise. And I think you'll find that I couldn't have imagined how this field would change 35 years ago when I started. And you're going to discover that it's going to change, like our world, very rapidly in the years ahead. But I think that you'll find here some advice that really is timeless in terms of being flexible and adaptable and carving your own path and your own future. I will note that the four of us do have one thing in common. We each majored in political science. And I wish my mother were here today so that I could tell her just exactly what I and at least 3 other wonderful people were able to do with our major. But whatever your academic background and discipline, whatever your passion, there is a path for you here in addressing international development. So with that, let me go ahead and introduce our star-studded panel today. Let me start with Dueaa Elzin. She's an international development consultant focused on technical sectors such as peace, stability, and political transitions. Her experience ranges from democracy and governance to economic growth and trade, gender and social inclusion, and health supply chains. Dueaa is also a business development strategist with expertise in proposal development and research methodologies for USAID, the Global Fund, and the Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office. An Arabic and Spanish speaker, she has field experience in Jordan, Tunisia, Lebanon, Palestine, Egypt, Mauritania, and Sudan. She worked for over 6 years with Comonix, including as a senior business development manager for the Middle East and North Africa. She has a BA in political science from Columbia University's Barnard College. And with such a well-rounded background, I think Dueaa will no doubt have valuable insights to enter and grow, to help you enter and grow professionally in such a dynamic and rapidly changing environment. Gabriel Laizer has over 15 years experience fostering strong partnerships among multilateral institutions, think tanks, government agencies, private sector, non-government organizations, and research and academic institutions. Food policy, agriculture, and international development are among his areas of expertise. He is well-versed in assessing business needs and recommending robust solutions and strategies to achieve objectives. He has a bachelor's in political science from California Lutheran University and a master's in international development from American University. Finally, CD Glin is the Vice President of the PepsiCo Foundation and the Global Head of Philanthropy of PepsiCo Incorporated. He oversees the foundation's strategic direction and continued focus on driving progress towards a more sustainable food system. He leads global internal and external engagement around the three global focus areas of creating equitable access to food and nutritional security, safe water, and economic opportunity. Prior to PepsiCo, Glin served as the President and CEO of the U.S. African Development Foundation, Associate Director of the Rockefeller Foundation, and he was an appointee in the Obama administration, where he served as the first director of Intergovernmental Affairs and Global Partnerships for the Peace Corps. He was also Vice President for Business Development at Dueaa Global, a global nonprofit, and consulted for the State Department, USAID, and the World Bank while living in Ghana and Nigeria. He began his career as a Peace Corps volunteer, yay, Peace Corps, in the first South African program during the transformational leadership of President Nelson Mandela. Glin earned a BA from Howard University, a master's level diploma in strategy and innovation from the Said Business School at Oxford University, and completed Harvard Business School's leadership for the senior executive program. So with that, let me go ahead and ask Dueaa to kick it off, talking a bit about herself, her background, and how she sees this field changing in a way that you can join us in it. Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you, Jane, for that beautiful introduction. So hi again. My name is Dueaa Elzin, and I guess just to give you a little bit more background, I feel like Jane hit it all, but I have been working, I have a total of about 9 years of work experience, 10 years of work experience, and 6 years particularly in the development sector, or more than 6 years at this point. I really kind of got my start in international development at Chemonics International, which is a large USAID contractor in Washington, D.C. So I studied political science in undergrad and focused on international affairs and development studies as a concentration, and just always kind of knew development from a more theoretical standpoint, and thought it was important to kind of make the move to DC. I'm from New York, was always living in New York, and had never visited DC before when I moved. I just kind of knew that it would be important to have a practical application of development theory and practice, and to kind of understand it in that way. So I decided a USAID contractor such as Chemonics would be able to give me some real life insights in just how government-funded donor work really looks like, especially since, being in New York, a lot of kind of traditional international organizations such as the UN, and it's kind of difficult to get opportunities, especially as an entry-level person. So, shifted gears a bit and decided to work at Chemonics, where I was there for a little over 6 years, and I was primarily business development there. So oftentimes in the contracting world, you'll have your traditional project managers, and then at least the way it was structured at Chemonics, it was business development teams for each region. And so I focused on Middle East and North Africa, which is my regional area of interest. I'm an Arabic speaker. And so for 6 years, I got to do a lot of really interesting business development work. And so just kind of really understanding RFPs and understanding the procurement process and that entire life cycle of what it takes to win a contract for a company, and then kind of pass it over to the project management teams that are able to implement the actual work and have impact on the ground. So, I've always enjoyed strategy. And so I think, that's kind of where you get to play a bit more of a strategic role, and in pre-positioning and capturing, and in heading out and doing kind of those G trips, as we called them, to meet people on the ground, understand the context, and put together reports and have that inform the proposal, and then hopefully lead to a winning contract. And so that was 6 years at Chemonics, and just kind of progressively more senior roles on various business development teams. Aside from Middle East and North Africa, I did also have a little stint in our supply chain division. And that was really just kind of out of my comfort zone. I'm not a health person. And so, definitely encourage kind of taking opportunities within large companies to move over and learn a new skill set. And then move back over to Middle East and North Africa. As I closed out my career at Chemonics, I left earlier this year in January to become an independent consultant and strategist. And so right now I'm actually a part-time employee at Key Lime International, and we have a booth, so come visit us. And so Key Lime is pretty much the premier international development consultant database. And so it does kind of bring a lot of my business development expertise, since, a lot of BD is just good networking and recruitment work. And so we kind of have a really cool marketplace where we're able to place consultants and work with clients who are looking for consultants, since I think anybody who works in the industry knows we're always looking for consultants. So it just kind of, it's just a really cool company that I'm working part-time with and helping grow. And then the rest of my time, I get to kind of pick and choose assignments as I please. And so I'm definitely happy to kind of talk a little bit more about what the independent lifestyle looks like. And a lot of it was kind of motivated by the pandemic. It obviously is horrible to be in a global pandemic. And so just kind of a lot of downtime to reflect and think about what I wanted out of it, especially as somebody who's kind of mid-level in my career. I'm not too senior, not too junior. So it's just kind of this weird space sometimes where there isn't, it feels like you're kind of stuck at times as a mid-level professional. And so kind of venturing out and doing the independent thing has really paid off, because I'm in Mexico right now. So I'm working remotely from Mexico. So I'm happy to kind of talk more about that. Hopefully I didn't take up too much time, but I'll pass it on to the next person.
Thank you so much. Dueaa, it's wonderful to hear a bit about your background. Gabe, would you like to go next?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for this opportunity. And Dueaa, I also wish I was in Mexico. I hope you're enjoying your time there. Again, thank you for SID's invitation to participate today, a wonderful organization that I respect and have worked with in the past. And so good people, and pleasure to meet you all attendees. So I think maybe what I want to start before I get into how I ended up here is to talk a little bit about the organization that I work for. So I work for the International Fund for Agriculture Development. And for those who are not familiar, there are 3 organizations that we refer to as the Rome-based agencies. So you have the FAO, the Food and Agriculture Organization, the oldest of the Rome-based agencies working to end hunger around the world. And the second organization is the World Food Program. And maybe most of you are familiar with WFP and what they do when there are emergencies and need for humanitarian assistance. And the third of the organizations that are all based in Rome is the IFAD, the organization that I work for. So I've been with IFAD for 3 weeks now. Actually, it will be 3 weeks tomorrow. But I spent 12 years at the FAO. So I'm very familiar with how the multilateral organization work in the food and agriculture space. So a bit of what we do, IFAD invests in rural people. As you can imagine, there are almost 2 billion people who are hungry around the world. The majority of those people live in the rural areas. What we try to do and what we focus with them is to increase food security within their own community, improve nutrition within their own families, and help them increase their own income. I think we believe that agriculture is one of the main paths out of poverty. What we do and where we work are the corners of the world that are the poorest, most remotest, and very fragile areas. And I'll explain a little bit why I say that, because if you're looking for this type of career, you're definitely not hanging out in Geneva or hanging out in London, or maybe chilling in Mexico. So we work at the toughest, hardest environment. And that's where our clients, the poorest and the hungriest, are living. So it is really important to kind of understand that as you're thinking of working in a multilateral area. So our model, our focus, our core is agriculture development. What we want to do is to connect farmers 75% of them are the one who are feeding the rest of the world. 75% of the smallholder farmers are providing food for the rest of us. We want to work with rural women, rural men, and to connect them with market and services that are available. And I can explain a little bit about that a bit later. Of critical importance for us is to make sure that these poor farmers, people that we're working with, our clients, have access to finance. That's really critical. Markets, technology, information, and I know my colleague from PepsiCo can connect those dots as well. We think that really, if you provide those 4 key components, we can lift hundreds of thousands of people out of poverty. But we're also working in very tough environments. Climate change is a horrendous issue right now. Conflict, as you can imagine, around the world, economic downturn, and now in the middle of all of that, COVID. So to work on all of those things, we really need people with a passion and commitment, and ingenuity, ability to solve problems, to deal with those challenges. And these are global challenges. I think one thing as I close that really opened our eyes is what happened with COVID. Sometimes we are comforted by the fact that we're surrounded by oceans, on both sides of this country. But what we know now is whatever happens in, Congo is in New York the next day, is in, Los Angeles the next day. So we are all connected, and how we solve these issues require all of us to kind of get into the game and offer our solution, offer our input. I'll stop there, and then when we go back, then I can go really deep into how I ended up here, what exactly I do, how I do it, and if you're interested in getting into this field, what do you need to do? Back to you, Jen.
Great. Thank you so much, Gabe. And CD, could I ask you to go ahead and talk a bit about yourself and what you do?
Thanks. I appreciate it. Good morning, everyone. As was mentioned, CD Glin, Vice President of the PepsiCo Foundation and Global Head of Philanthropy at PepsiCo. So I'm really honored and privileged to be featured as panelists here today at the Career Fair. I want to say thank you to SID Washington for inviting me to appear. I'm actually a new SID board member, so really excited to continue engagement with SID after having been a member and a fan, if you will, of the great work that the organization does now on the board. And I'm really pleased that so many people are present, even in this virtual setting. It does give us the ability to reach out and impact people more. And so it's a really unique opportunity. And thinking about a career in international development in 2021 is so different than when I started. The industry is truly an industry now. Before it was comprised mostly, this is in the late 80s, early 90s, mostly former Peace Corps volunteers or Peace Corps-like opportunities to volunteer, to serve, and then foreign service and smattering of nonprofits, and definitely wasn't as diverse in terms of people of color. So I'm really even proud of my colleagues on this panel. We're representing international development and careers in foreign assistance, if you will, and it didn't look like this as it does now in 2021. So today the sector has grown immensely, numerous career opportunities, and I've been fortunate to do and to be involved in a number of them. I mean, you're talking about government, NGOs, academia, philanthropy, financial services, investing, business, technology firms, multilateral. So the world is your oyster, and the ocean is vast right now in terms of international opportunity because everyone's trying to go global. For me, I got my start in the Peace Corps. My dad had been in the Air Force, so I grew up overseas, so I had a travel bug. In general, I wanted to be a part of making the world a better place, and so Peace Corps was where I got my start. I had served as a foreign service intern, so internships, at the Department of State was really instrumental in sort of getting me started. So I definitely encourage, volunteering and internships and things of that nature. But Peace Corps was there. After Peace Corps, I actually worked for the agency, went on to then work for international NGOs, got my master's degree, worked for as was mentioned, in Nigeria and in Ghana on the ground as an independent consultant with the World Bank. So did a number of things, and then really in 2007, got back involved in the Peace Corps because I was selected as an appointee in the Obama administration to go back to the Peace Corps. So for me, it was this beautiful bookend of having been a volunteer during the era of Nelson Mandela and then coming back in the Obama administration as the head of global partnerships and intergovernmental affairs at the Peace Corps. But in shifting from the Peace Corps to philanthropy, and this is where the foundation, the Rockefeller Foundation came into play, then went back to government at the U.S. African Development Foundation, really focused around grassroots development, and now in corporate America and leading corporate social responsibility, corporate social investment for PepsiCo. So what I can say is the through line for me is always trying to be committed to making an impact wherever I am in whichever industry. And for me, it's ultimately being very flexible and being intellectually curious as to ways in which I could contribute. Because as a Peace Corps volunteer, I was really in the education field. As a consultant, I focused a lot on SMEs, small and medium-sized enterprises. At the Rockefeller Foundation, I was focused on climate change and agriculture and agricultural development and renewable energy. At USADF, U.S. African Development Foundation, it was all about grassroots communities and grassroots community engagement. And now at PepsiCo, we focus in a number of areas, but as a food and beverage company, focus a lot on access to nutritious foods and food success, and that's about conservation, that's about distribution and purification, and also a big focus around economic opportunity for underserved communities. But the through line really was trying to always be intellectually curious, to looking at different opportunities of bringing my whole self to work, and also just having a really positive, collaborative attitude and positive energy about trying to be a true contributor. So I don't think, the day and age of being in one place, and we all know this, for 20 years and riding out your career there in one organization, it's not happening anymore. And it actually doesn't benefit you in the same way of having taking your skill sets to other areas to have a broader impact, because people are now looking for that diversity of mindset, that diversity of experience. So for me, having gone from development to philanthropy, to nonprofits, to government, and now being in corporate America, I bring a lot more to the role because I have been in other places. So I would encourage all of you to really, get a number of experiences under your belt and take every opportunity, if you will. That's the way you keep rising as you keep climbing. So keep going and keep growing. A lot more to share around PepsiCo, around what I'm doing now, but let me stop there and also just say thank you all for being here and for taking the time out of your schedules to really hear from us, but also to keep climbing and growing, even by hearing how other people got to where they are now.
Well, CD, that was great. Thank you so much. And it kind of keys off to the question I was going to pose to each of you. And Dueaa, maybe I'll start first with you. But basically, what advice do you have for those interested in working in international development, especially since a lot of them are starting off their careers? And I'd like you to also kind of put it in that context, which Gabe, you touched on, of COVID-19. Because, for example, one of the first things I would have said is go off to Peace Corps if you're an undergraduate or if you haven't gained field experience overseas. But now, Peace Corps are shut down overseas. And what are other ways that people can kind of get that toehold and that experience in this sector? So Dueaa, do you mind starting with your advice to many of the undergrads, grad students, and people new in their careers here?
Yeah, no, I mean, I still distinctly remember how tough it felt like to kind of get my foot in the door as somebody who graduated. It was still kind of, it wasn't the Great Recession, but it was right after. And so it was still a very tough job market. And so, I began my career at a totally, not totally different, but it was a professional networking association for finance professionals in the Middle East and North Africa, and kind of leveraged just my interest in the region, but didn't really have much to do with international development per se. And so when I, really decided this is a career path that I would like to embark on, it felt very overwhelming. So anybody who's having those feelings, trust me, I empathize with you, and you're not alone in terms of feeling oh my gosh, how do I get my foot in the door if I didn't do Peace Corps, which I didn't do Peace Corps. To be frank, I wouldn't be able to afford to do Peace Corps. And so there are a lot of people that are in that boat, so I think for me, it was just kind of important to I guess, cast my net a little wider. I looked at government contracting as an entry point. And so, you know, DC is definitely a city for contractors, right? And so that, you know, can be a separate conversation around like the pluses and minuses around that. But, you know, USAID is one of the largest donors on earth, if not the largest donor of government assistance. And so it is a great way, I think, to kind of start your career. And there are a lot of opportunities just by virtue of the sheer amount of aid and the fact that it's, you know, it's kind of something that's never usually cut despite the politics. It's something that both Republicans and Democrats will always agree on, and there will always be funding for. So there is, I don't want to say like guaranteed stability, but stability in the sense that this is always going to be a priority of the US government to provide assistance in this way. So why not try to get your foot in the door in this kind of part of the industry, and it's a bit more, I guess, amenable to kind of entry-level folks who don't have years of technical experience, or, you know, I feel like I remember looking at all of the job descriptions and it was like, you need to have like been in Uganda for 5 years, and it's like, I just graduated, like how, you know, so it's definitely overwhelming. And so I think government contracting does allow for entry level and kind of growth in that way, and that was what at least happened to me at Chemonics. You know, leveraging my interests as well as my language skills in Arabic, I was able to kind of get an entry-level role on a business development team. And I didn't even really know what business development was back then. I mean, I was kind of like, what do I need to do on this team? And so like I mean, that also speaks to good recruitment. I think like they kind of saw some, you know, a little light in me in terms of like, okay, she can have a pretty good skill set for BD. And so I got placed on that track. But I mean, there's project management, there's, I would say, at least if you're looking at the contracting route, it's pretty much split between project management and business development. And I think, you know, if you have a specific language skill, that's always going to be a huge plus. And don't be afraid or don't think that that won't be enough. So even if you don't necessarily have the experience like I did, being able to speak Arabic as well as just having knowledge of the region and having an interest in the region really kind of went a long way, at least in my personal experience of being able to kind of score that entry level position. And so I think the other thing, like, you know, you really should kind of do your research in terms of what pathway you'd like to go. So I definitely took a more generalist pathway. So even though I, over the years, was able to take on a lot of really interesting technical sector research and do a lot of work across peace and stability, gender and social inclusion, and economic growth work from a business development lens, it was kind of very individual projects. And it was like, okay, we're capturing, you know, a really cool SME development project in Egypt. So I got to kind of dive in for a few months and then move on to the next thing. And that was what I liked. I liked the fact that I was able to kind of dabble in different sectors and even different countries within the Middle East and North Africa, and even kind of branching out a bit more to sub-Saharan Africa. And so I think just being able, so I just knew that was the pathway that worked for me, kind of taking a more generalist position. But if you know, for example, you would love to be, you know, an early childhood reading expert and somebody who's able to kind of contribute to pedagogy and curriculum development, that I wouldn't recommend necessarily going on a generalist pathway. You probably, you know, should seek out opportunities to take on more technical assignments, or, you know, to get a master's degree as it relates to that specific area, and kind of delve in on the technical side, so that you're hired as like a technical expert versus, for me, as like a business development, or any of my colleagues who were the project managers, the compliance folks, the folks who understood how to run the finances, the monthly invoicing to USAID. So it's a lot of the stuff that is what keeps a project going. That's what you would be learning, at least in an entry-level position at a place like Chemonics, for example. And so I think it definitely has its benefits, because at least for me, I'm able to kind of, now that I've had about 6 years or a little over 6 years of experience kind of doing the business development processes, one thing that you know is that there's always going to be business development needed, right? There's always going to be a need for contracts to win projects for different organizations to kind of build capacity of folks who are interested in, winning contracts from USAID or other donors, Department of State. We didn't do DOD, but DOD is definitely there doing work, and then other foreign donors, so such as formerly known as DFID, but FCDO, the Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office. In Geneva, there's the Global Fund for AIDS, tuberculosis, and malaria. And so, there's just lots of opportunity to kind of understand these different clients, but also know that when they are looking for an implementer, they're going to be releasing a request for proposals. So your people are going to be needed with that skill set to kind of respond and price things. So that's what I would say about USAID contracting from my experience. Again, if you find yourself feeling like you want to contribute on a more technical level, I would recommend maybe a different route, just because it is a bit more difficult at a contractor that is very kind of specialized in process and in compliance and being responsive to government and red tape. There's going to be red tape. So just kind of understanding all of that. So yeah, hopefully that answers the question. Was there another part of the question that I missed? Okay.
I'm going to put our panelists to work. I'm going to have Gabe go next, but Dueaa, while you were speaking, there were some questions specifically for you in the chat. CD, you may see some questions also for yourself in the chat, but Gabe, I'm going to put you in the hot seat next. I did see one question about whether or not you should add your language skills to your resume, even if you're a beginner, and my answer to that is, oh yeah.
I was actually I was just about to comment on that one. Yes, absolutely. You can put your language there and just put, beginner or, whichever way you want to do that, but absolutely include that. And that, especially in the multilateral setting, we are looking at that. And so Dueaa mentioned that in the beginning. In the UN system, you cannot get away with say, I only speak English. And I think that also really hamper how many Americans are in the UN system. And the way it works in the UN system is they try to balance citizenship based on the different regions. And so you might look at this, I know example, the FAO has fewer Americans, and so there might be more opportunities for Americans to be there. So always look at that, and language usually is one of the issues. So I do agree with a lot of what Dueaa mentioned about what you need to. For me, I've had 3 jobs in the last 20 years, and all of those jobs came simply from asking somebody for coffee. Can we have coffee? Can we talk? Networking. Talk to people. I understand we're not traveling, we're not meeting for coffee, we're not doing that. LinkedIn is a great tool. Connect with people, ask what they're doing. What I learned a long time ago is everybody likes to talk about what they do. So give them the space to talk about what they do. Listen, comment, follow them, follow their social media, write to them. Ask to just have a 5 minutes just interview to hear what they do, how they got there. So that's the first advice. In the UN setting, there are a couple of things that I really think are important for you to understand. One, you need to be an optimistic person. We're dealing with very tough issues, very challenging issues. A lot of them are depressing. Hundreds of thousands of kids dying every day because of malnutrition. We're looking at how climate is affecting people who have to leave their family, trying to cross the Rio Grande and drowning because they want a better life for them and their family. We can give up. It's easy to just say, you know what, I'm done, forget about it. So we need to be optimistic to be able to deal with this issue. We also need to be, you need to be a persistent person. You send a resume, you get rejected, you send another one. You change things, you devise things, you talk to different people how to approach that. So do not give up quickly because you hit the wall. I've had a job that I applied 15 times and I got 1 interview and it lasted half an hour. And it was the worst interview, but you know what? I still apply for that job and again and again and again. And guess where am I sitting today? You have to be diplomatic. I think there's something about giving the other person an opportunity to share their perspective and for you to share your perspective. And those are skills that you need to be developing now. And if you're in school, you're probably dealing with that as well. and listen. I think there's a reason we have 2 ears and 1 mouth. We need to listen twice as much and talk half as much. And I think in the UN setting, in a diplomatic setting, that's really, really important. You need to be adaptable. You know, you were supposed to go in a cushy assignment in Europe, and suddenly you are sent to, you know, South Sudan. That's what it is in the UN system. And that's where you go. Where the need is where you're being sent. Are you ready for that? You know, no luxury hotels. It's dangerous, but we're open to that because of the good cause that we want to deal with. You know, I mentioned earlier, join professional networking group like LinkedIn. You know, it comes down again to the cover letter and your resume. Have somebody look at it, multiple people look at it, make sure there are no errors. You're connecting the job that you're trying to apply to the skill sets that you have. That's really critical. If 300 people apply, you have great ideas, but there are too many errors in your resume, it's going in the recycle bin. So really keep that in mind as you're doing this. Again, be flexible. Be flexible to be able to move from one place to another all the times. I think the Forbes did a story that in this generation, you might have 5 different career paths before you retire. So be prepared, be flexible to change as you go. I'll answer some of the question online as well. Back to you, Jen.
Thank you so much. And CD, let me have you go ahead and chime in.
Perfect. Thank you. I'm looking at the clock too. So, I mean, Gabe and Dueaa, you know, nailed it in so many ways. I'm going to be very specific so that, you know, the people online can sort of take messages and have real takeaways. So 3 things in terms of advice I'd give myself at the beginning of my career or that I found most valuable. 1, 2, and 3. So volunteer, visibility, and having a vision. When I talk about volunteering, I'm not just talking about Peace Corps. I'm talking about anything where you're giving of yourself, you're raising your hand, you're joining this internship, this fellowship, this is networking opportunities, you know, that you are a giver, that you're trying to be a part of the solution. And so this is talking about, you know, your head and your mind and your ideas. This is about your hands getting really involved. And this is all your heart really showing that you're passionate about those interests in those opportunities. And I used to be a recruiter for the Peace Corps, and we used to talk about a lot of people wanted to join, wanted to be a part of transformational change. And the first thing we say, you're interested in X, Y, or Z, environment, agriculture, health, education. How have you demonstrated that interest? How have you demonstrated your interest in something? Because right now, the one resource we all have is time. It's the most limited resource, but we all have it. So how have you spent your time and demonstrated your interest? Don't just talk about it, be about it. And there's ways in which to do that. So volunteer and really is one of the key tenets. Visibility. And this is by showing up today. Don't hide or shy away from the spotlight. This is about leaning into challenges and pressure situations. This is Gabe applying 15 times to one job, but really being visible and being seen, and then showing that you want to be seen and want to bring about a positive outcome, that you actually want to contribute. What can you bring? So have an offer, but also being visible in addition to volunteering was critical, and I think it's critical. And then really having some sense of a vision. You know, there's a phrase like, don't make me think. This is why nowadays you're going to ask everyone to write you a recommendation or a letter or something. Offer up, I'll do the first draft. Offer up, you know, CD, Jane, Dueaa, Gabe, hey, I would love for you to recommend, write the message, sort of show that you have a vision, an idea of where you want to go, what you want to gain. Because people aren't in the position to do the work for you. You have to give them something to go on. And so really think about where you want to go, what you want to do, how you want to contribute, also what you stand for and what you stand against. This is really important in our space because conviction and bringing ideas to the table is truly, truly important. Then I would say, we hear a lot about skill set, and I think it was mentioned, and so Dueaa and others mentioned it, and it's so important in terms of skill set and language and writing and things of that nature. But I want to also share a little bit around mindset, intellectual curiosity, ask questions, be a problem solver, have a mindset of how might we get this done? What will it take to get something done? So being really intellectually curious and coming with ideas and thoughts, and then saying, hey, I want to quote unquote pick your brain because I think this, but you know, is this the right way to go? What's your perspective on that? As was mentioned, people get to a certain level and they like to pontificate and feel smart. So asking questions and letting them sort of share with you what got them there or what their perspective is always very helpful. I would say being interpersonal and collaborative. This was also mentioned. It's key to our space. This is about being, this is also volunteering and being a donor, but interpersonal skills and being collaborative. No one person, organization, company has all the answers or all the solutions. So you have to have a mindset of how do we collaborate? How do we partner? How can I join you and we do it together with someone else? And then lastly, the intellectual curiosity, the interpersonal skills and the collaborative nature, but also execution and action. Right now, there's a lot of thinking and we need a lot of doing. So we need doers and thinkers. The people who think about a lot of ideas, but then go out and do something, delivering, be somebody who's seen as getting things done, somebody who can bring about, especially at this early stage of your career and the mid-level, literally always be, not closing, always be shipping, delivering something, always be shipping, and really think about execution as a key capability. I'm gonna shift a little bit. I saw some questions in the comments. Just really quickly, Jane, around private sector's role in development. You know, when I was growing up, when some other people maybe on the panel were early in their careers, the private sector was almost the bad guy in development. The private sector didn't necessarily have a role in development. Now you can't have a conversation about business's role in society. And also, as we see, you know, companies, pharma companies that were pariahs 2 years ago, we're actually thanking God for Moderna and Pfizer, like ways in which we never would have thought about pharmaceutical companies. So business and business's role in society is becoming more important. And we know it takes the private sector as well as civil society, nonprofits, and communities and government to all come together. So I lead social and community impact for basically one of the largest food and beverage companies in the world. We're the largest in America and one of the largest in the world, 70 billion in assets annually. Our food and beverages are consumed by nearly 1 billion times each day in almost every country around the world. A diverse portfolio of 23 billion-dollar brands. 23 brands inside PepsiCo earn $1 billion every year. This is Pepsi Cola, you know that. But what about Lay's? What about Doritos? What about Gatorade? Had orange juice this morning, Tropicana. Had oatmeal, we own Quaker. So this is about food and agriculture that leads to malnutrition, that is trying to bring about solutions to food security, safe water access, economic opportunity, because we're one of the largest buyers of potatoes, of corn, of oats, of nuts, of citrus, water. So we are a development agricultural entity, and we really are trying to bring about transformational change. So I have the privilege of taking everything that I did from the Peace Corps, from nonprofits, from government, and going inside of a company that literally has 300,000 employees in 200 plus countries around the world. And they're like, wow, what is the development guy doing inside PepsiCo? And this is where those of you thinking about career transition from, as somebody said, education to environment or business to civil society or what have you, think about what your skill set is, what you bring. And I am actually an organ transplant. I have been transported from a development guy into a new body, which is a company. And I worry, will the company accept or reject me? Will the company reject this new organ? But the company's looking for it. They need people like us. The private sector needs people like you who are studying political science, but also studying many other things to come into. Multilaterals need people with this kind of mindset. So it's really important to bring to be proud of what you bring, and then understand, be the translator of how your skills in one industry translate and will be supportive for that new industry. I've worked on food and agriculture and health and education and environment, and the companies have to play a role in all of those issues. So I just wanted to sort of say that around one of the questions, that taking who you are and what you bring to a different entity sometimes is a way to, again, be a part of change, but also making yourself relevant in a new place. Sometimes it feels scary because we like the safe spaces and you don't want to be different, but sometimes they want to have that different mindset around the table, because these problems and challenges are systemic, and we need new thoughts and new ways of being in a lot of different industries. And so for me, going to the private sector after 20 plus years of being in international development, philanthropy, and government, very much trepidatious on my side, but for them, very welcoming, because these big companies and corporations and tech firms, they want people who are cultural translators. They want people who can do things in a different way, a different mindset. And so the opportunities are wide and vast in ways that they've never been. And I just encourage all of you to keep looking, not in the, yes, in the usual places, but also sometimes in the unusual spaces, but then be prepared to talk about how your skill set, your background, your demonstrated interest in an area can be valuable to them.
CD, thank you so much. I want to keep taking some direct questions from our audience here. Chauncey Bigler asked one that I really like. How much do international development talent teams value unpaid volunteer extracurricular experience and applications? My answer to that is a lot, and not just at the entry level, but for instance, when I was interviewing for a position I eventually had as an executive, the International Services Department of the Red Cross, one of the first questions that came up in my interview was, what do you do to volunteer? Now, especially for the Red Cross, it's a volunteer organization. And luckily, I mean, I've always believed in volunteering, not just for, it wasn't as prized when I was coming of age as it is now, where it's really embedded in our education system. I get asked about my volunteer experience all the time. That can be on, for instance, what you do on an ad hoc basis. Maybe every so often you pitch in on a pop-up opportunity, to what you do on a regular and continued basis. There's all sorts of ways to kind of do board service. I think it's really important that we also look at how to strengthen the internal management of organizations, whether small or large nonprofits, or the community-based organizations that we really need to partner with in international development. So understanding also that role of a board, helping to provide vision, strategy, and oversight, and then management or employees and staff in terms of going ahead and implementing strategy and doing the operational side is really important, and making sure that internally organizations are well run. And I think that's something that, Dueaa touched on in terms of her role, whether it's project management, business development. This is a sector that is a business. And that's whether you're working for profit like CD, nonprofit, or government like me in various incarnations, or Gabe in a multilateral organization, or Dueaa, both in for-profit, nonprofit, and now independent consulting. So these are some great questions coming in. Sydney McIntyre just recently said to CD, I often hesitate when considering working for the private sector or for larger organizations, thinking that my systems thinking, problem solving brain will not mesh with their culture, and my ability to make impact will be minimized. Dueaa, can I ask you to speak a little bit too, because Chemonics is for profit, but you've also worked in nonprofit, and you kind of are right on the bridge of this. Would you mind talking a little bit about your thoughts on that?
Absolutely. I mean, I think even, that was one of the reasons why I wanted to work at Chemonics, was because it is a for-profit organization, but a mission-driven for-profit. And so I think coming out of some nonprofit work, as well as even just in studies and kind of seeing a lot of some of the constraints that the nonprofit industry as a whole faces, I felt like it would be important to kind of see what a for-profit does differently, or like what access to resources they may have. And, it really does kind of change things. And so I think just because something is for profit or private sector doesn't mean they're like inherently evil. And I think, and just kind of as CD was saying, I think that was something I also had to overcome, and just be like, oh my God, I'm supposed to be like working for peanuts, and like, and so that I can like be a martyr for this, industry. And it's like, no, you can make a decent living, and also, have access to resources, have access to systems. I think like working at a large for-profit that is mission driven, brings kind of the best in people who are, looking for that impact and looking for creative ways to actually measure results, while also kind of being held accountable for, meeting budget and making, that percentage in profit that our target is for the year, and meeting, our backlog goal for winning new contracts. And so it's such a good skill set to have. And like, I think I would have never thought I'd become such a business-minded person until I had this opportunity. And now that I do have that skill set, I'm able to kind of apply it in so many different ways. So if I do ever want to go back into nonprofit, or if I want to shift further into private sector work, as long as there is, and I think you just have to be able to assess the fact that, okay, this organization truly does have a mission, truly does have values that align with yours, or, you know, if they have like a pretty substantive philanthropy or, you know, corporate giving culture, you know, look into that. Like, you have a right to ask those types of questions. And like, if it's a company that completely does not align, then sure, you know, pass up on it. But there are a lot, I mean, I think especially in the wake of, you know, the social justice protests that we had last year, and just a lot of the demands that people are making on organizations and companies and multinationals to be more ethical, to be more responsible, you know, this is really the time to kind of demand that from different organizations. And a lot of organizations are, you know, preempting it by, you know, putting money towards grants or putting money towards community development efforts. So don't automatically shut it out. And even if it is, for me at least, like a government contractor that was for profit in this kind of weird space, like, it ended up being so great because I was able to kind of build that skill set and apply it to just as broadly as possible now.
Great. Let me bring up another question from the chat from Rachel, and I'm going to combine it with another one about resume versus CV. But Rachel wanted to know if there was a path to international development work without a master's degree. She's a mid-level career professional with experience in program management in NGOs in the private sector. She's a returned Peace Corps volunteer, but she doesn't have a master's degree in international development. My advice to Rachel, and panelists, feel free to disagree, is I don't think that she necessarily needs to go get a master's degree. I think she has a lot of great project management and field experience right there. And I think field experience, I would value over someone with field experience over a master's if I had to choose between one or the other. But to me, it's that field experience that matters most. In terms of resume versus CV, I think it kind of comes down to generalist versus specialist. There's nothing wrong with either way. I am very much a generalist. I think specialists, yes, if you're, say, going for a PhD in epidemiology because public health is your calling and passion, you need a CV. But I think that for those of us who are generalists, maybe more of a resume, but I invite our panelists to chime in with their opinions. So, you know, up for grabs. First one to unmute themselves and jump in.
I think you got it absolutely right. I think in particular, you know, with the UN system, you know, a lot of the application kind of requires a master's degree, but now they're actually going back and looking at the full human. You know, I was talking earlier about volunteering. If you volunteer for a year or two, that is significant experience. If you are leading a team of volunteers, your leadership is already showing. So you're already using there. And yeah, you've served for 2 years in the Peace Corps, that's significant work. So yeah, you can have a bachelor's degree plus the 5 years of work experience, and that's an equivalent to almost a master's degree. And most jobs now are looking at things in those lenses, that, you know, the holistic, the full human person plus the bachelor's degree. And now definitely, you know, if it's a technical aspect of the work, then they're going to look for a master's degree. And again, for the UN system also, you know, the language experience comes in this to play as well. Maybe CD, if you want to comment.
No, I couldn't agree more. I think you guys nailed it. It really, and I said that my phrase around demonstrated interest. Like, if you're interested and you spend 5 years, 2 years, 10 years doing something, spending 1 year and getting a master's degree does not equate to that. So I personally have never been a big proponent that everything requires a master's degree, but now more and more companies, organizations, we're all looking at that. So it's not as it used to be. And I think diversifying not only what you bring in terms of your experience, but also where you look. And so all of you are at entry or mid-level stages of your careers. And this is where looking at multilaterals, looking at development consulting firms, looking at the private sector. I can just tell you really quickly, it's not a commercial, but even at a PepsiCo, you know, the people with the backgrounds that you have, we have a public policy division. You know, they talk about environmental risk. They talk about health risk. They talk about global pandemics. These are, you know, scientists and policymakers in our public policy. We have R&D, a chief scientist, a chief medical officer, you know, government affairs, we're going into emerging markets. What are the issues and the challenges in these emerging markets? So a lot of the skills and capabilities that you bring don't limit your quote unquote search or your opportunity set to things that are already known to you. Think about how those skills can be translated and utilized in different fields. Sustainability, a big office on sustainability at PepsiCo, but as Dueaa mentioned, these purpose-driven entities, whatever their organizational makeup, whether it be government, multilateral, nonprofit, or for-profit. We all talk about triple bottom line, right? We talk about people, we talk about the planet, and we talk about profit. And so at the end of the day, those things come together from a way in which it gives you more opportunities than ever. I mean, if I actually am somewhat envious, but also, intimidated by the solution set that you actually have at your disposal. You can bring your skills to so many different places, but it is about being a little bit deliberate about what you believe in, what you want to make better. It's really easy to tear down and to sort of say, oh, I'm not going to do this, not going to do that. But how do you build something up? Are you a part of the solution?
Yeah. And I think you hit the nail on the head. That's it. Anyone who wants to work in this sector, social justice, be prepared for a long haul. You're going to take, sometimes steps forward, sometimes steps backwards, sideways. But anyway, let me just go ahead and wrap up because I think we are actually just a little bit over our time, but I could keep going on forever and always.
I just wanted to say I don't have a master's degree. So for anybody who is feeling self-conscious or insecure about it, I don't have a master's. I've made it this far. I think staying at an organization like Chemonics, where I built a tangible skill set and became progressively more senior as the years went by, has served me more than a master's degree would. And that's just my personal experience.
Well, that's great advice. So once again, I want to thank SID-W, Julie, Pebbles, the entire team, and of course, our incredible panelists, Dueaa, CD, and Gabe. Thank you very much. And thank you all of you who came and attended. I hope that this was helpful to you. This has been a great career. I guarantee you 35 years from now, you'll be glad you embarked on it. Take good care.
Agreed. Take care, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.